The book doesn't look particularly creepy. There are no ominous images on the cover, no words of foreboding. There was only plain red canvas with gold letters that read, "The Tale of Roly-Poly." I never saw the book until Ginny pulled it from her collection on the shelf. It may have been left by the previous owners. We'd only moved into this neighborhood a month ago. Ginny was already snuggled under the covers when I opened the book. At 6, she was starting to read and never needed to be coaxed to bed if I promised her a story. Well, almost never. Princesses were her new obsession, and we covered most of the classics like Sleeping Beauty and Cinderella. The Tale of Roly-Poly was a departure from the usual set list. "Are you sure you want this one, Pumpkin?" Ginny yawned. "Yes, Daddy." I shrugged and began to read. There were 2 boys, 2 children like you. One was called Jack, the other was Hugh. The boys sat in their room, for there was nothing to do. They were so bored, a common bugaboo. The book contained a simple illustration of 2 boys in a bedroom decorated with baseball-themed wallpaper. They thought and they thought, they huffed and they puffed, until Hugh said phew, and enough is enough. "Let's play a game. We'll upend this loose end." "I know," said Jack. "I'll call on my friend." I groaned internally and hoped that Ginny would fall asleep soon. This wasn't exactly Dr. Seuss. Jack took the book and said the words written down. Come out, you silly old clown." With a wish and a whoosh and a fizzle and pop, Roly-Poly arrived with a great big plop. And there was an enormous figure that dwarfed the 2 boys next to him. And there was a man dressed as a traditional pantomime clown, complete with a rough white makeup and garish red lips. "How do?" said the clown. "I've come to play." "You," said Hugh. "Oh dear, holy moly." "Don't be scared," declared Jack. "It's just Roly-Poly." "What should we do?" said Hugh, all aflutter, as he pulled out his toys from the bedroom clutter. There were many games of various names, all wires and megawatts, a singing machine, a trampoline, there were even 2 robots. "Oh no," said the clown, "this will not do. Let's play some real games, ditch this techno voodoo. Come with me and you'll see, my home is quite grand. You'll have all that you'll need in topsy-turvy land." The 2 boys nodded, their hearts filled with glee. They took the clown's hand and counted 3 Mississippi. Hugh and Jack closed their eyes as the world twirled and twirled. They whooped with joy as a new land was unfurled. The clown's home was quite splendid, full of candies and treats. The fun never ended. No parents, no chores, no bedtime or rules, no horrible homework from boring old schools. The boys played and played, and all 3 were glad, until one fateful day when the clown became sad. "What's wrong, Roly-Poly? Is there something we can do?" The boys asked and asked, but their worry still grew. "Oh dear," the clown mumbled, "my apologies most humbled. I'm just very hungry," as his large tummy rumbled. "Would you like chocolate or chips or gooey cream cake? We have hot dogs and ice cream in every milkshake." But the clown shook his head, for his belly did ache. Then he grabbed little Hugh. "A final meal you will make." My stomach flipped when I saw the contents of the next page. I shut the book immediately. "Let's call it a night, Princess." Ginny tried to protest, but her eyelids were heavy with sleep. "What happened to the boy, Daddy?" "I'll tell you tomorrow, sweetie." I kissed Ginny on the forehead and turned out the light. I went downstairs and poured a large glass of wine before reopening the book. The page that I closed contained an illustration of a gruesome scene. The clown held one of the boys above his head and had bitten into the child's left side. His teeth tore away chunks of pink flesh as blood trickled down his ruby-stained lips. The boy's eyes were shut, his tear-stricken face frozen in agonized fear. Spurred on by morbid curiosity, I continued to read. Roly-Poly grabbed the boy and held him aloft. He took a big bite. Sweet Hugh was so soft. He gnashed and he gnawed, he chewed and he slurped, and when nothing was left, the clown loudly burped. He looked around, there was no Jack to be found. The boy had run. The chase had begun. Jack ducked and he darted, he ran and he ran. Roly-poly chuckled, "Come back here, young man. This place is large, indeed it does sprawl. There is no way out, no way at all." The clown was quite right, for try as he might, Jack rushed to escape, but there was no exit in sight. The boy grew tired, his breath became weary. Roly-poly caught up, sounding quite cheery. "You're tougher than most, you I will cook." And he hung the boy up on an old meat hook. The child screamed and he shouted, "You great fat liar." The clown licked his lips as he stoked the big fire. I turned to the last page. The boy dangled from a hook over a gaping fire pit. Parts of his skin were cracked and blackened as the flames licked his small frame. The clown prodded the fire with a stick in one hand. The other hand waved to the reader as a maniacal smile revealed 2 rows of long, sharp teeth. The clown was so happy. This sweet meat was a treat. Hail to the chef, bon appetit. The book ended there. I felt the bile rise in the back of my throat. What kind of twisted individual writes something like this? It was probably a desperate hack writer looking for some notoriety. Whatever it was, it left a bad taste in my mouth. I finished my wine and threw the book in the trash. I woke up the next morning and took the paper lying on the doorstep. It was Sunday, but I never liked to sleep in. I put on a pot of coffee and glanced at the headline on the countertop. My heart froze. 5th anniversary of local boy's disappearance. Hundreds had taken part in a remembrance rally to mark the 5th anniversary of the disappearance of brothers Hugh and Jack Healy. The brothers, aged 8 and 6, were abducted from their home on January 7, 2012. Police have issued a fresh appeal for information this weekend. Story continued on page 3. I ran outside and removed the cover of the trash can. Perhaps whoever wrote that book knew something about the boy's disappearance. At the very least, I needed to report this sick material to the police. My stomach lurched as I regarded the contents of the can. The book was gone. A primal panic rose in my chest as I dashed upstairs to Ginny's bedroom. A single piece of paper lay atop the crumpled sheets of her empty bed. Ginny picked a good book, a true tale to excite, but Dad did not like it. He thought it was trite. He stopped the story at the moment of glory. "Oh no, not for you. This part is unfit." The clown did not like that, not one little bit. So Roly-Poly told Ginny, who was ever so skinny, "Let's have some fun. We'll show that old ninny." And now Ginny plays, and the land topsy-turvy, full of sugar and spice, and all things that are girly. While the princess holds court in dresses of satin, the clown simply smiles. She'll do, she'll fatten. It's been 1 week since Ginny went missing. I've given the page to the cops, but they're as baffled as I am. Every hellish verse of that awful book is seared into my skull. I can't sleep. I can't eat. I'm typing this as both an appeal and a warning. If you find this book, don't open it. Don't read it. Call the police. A child's life may depend on it. A few years ago, I was looking for a roommate. The vacancy had risen because my previous one was a Swedish guy who had been having some trouble with homesickness. Eventually, it got too much and he moved away to somewhere with a colder climate. So, as you do, I put some ads up on various sites, and it didn't take long before a guy called Robert responded. We messaged back and forth a couple of times and arranged to meet up one day at Starbucks. I was immediately struck by his easy charm and wit. You couldn't hope to meet a person who was easier to talk to. He was in art school with ambitions of making it big as a painter. How exactly one would go about that, I have no idea, but we had become friends straight away, and I didn't think twice about letting him move in. Just before we parted ways that day, Rob, as he'd insisted I'd call him, asked a question I really didn't anticipate. "Hey, I know this is a weird question, but, are you by chance afraid of clowns?" he said with a weird smile. I suppose so, I replied, wondering why anyone would ask. I probably watched Stephen King's It at a stupidly young age. Are you scared of them? Oh, damn, he said. I'm a clown on the weekends. I do like charity events and fundraisers, visit sick kids in hospitals sometimes. Is that a problem for you? I mean, I know some people are seriously afraid of clowns. Oh, of course not. That sounds cool. It's just the bad clowns that scare me, you know? I had never personally known one before, but Rob didn't seem scary. I promise, I don't kill kids, he said with a grin. He threw his neck back and drained the last of the coffee from the cup. It's the adults I go for. I burst out laughing at his dark sense of humor. What a cool guy, I thought. I'm actually going to be looking forward to this new roommate situation. Our first few weeks living together went about as smoothly as possible, and things were a good deal more peaceful than they had been with my previous roommate. I definitely didn't miss being woken up at unholy hours by his sobbing. Rob would get up, go to class, come home, then paint or have a quick drink with a friend or two. Sometimes on the weekend, he'd put on his clown suit and go out to those charity events that he talked about. He didn't seem like a scary clown. He was so cool, in fact, that he even began to change my view of clowns. There was a freezer in our kitchen that I told Rob not to bother using. It hadn't been right since before he moved in. I kept meaning to call someone to come out and look at it or replace it, but I guess it must have slipped his mind. One day, about 5 months after Rob moved in, I came home to find the lights on but total silence in the house. That was strange. Rob was always watching TV or playing his guitar. He hated silence. But I really knew something was up when I noticed something different about that freezer. The freezer door was open. I walked over, looked inside. Oh my God. 8 chunks of a human body, all cut up neatly and stored tidily on the shelves. I can't really explain how I felt in that moment. I panicked. What the hell can you do in that situation? My mind was racing, and I thought back to the day we met Rob, and he made that joke about only killing adults. Holy shit. Just then, a faint shuffling noise came from Rob's room. I didn't know what to do. For some reason, I tiptoed over to his room to see what the hell was happening. I don't know. I suppose adrenaline just takes over at that point. I peered in, and sure enough, there he was, lying on the floor with a mad look in his eyes as he stared at the ceiling. After a long delay in which I'm sure he was aware of my presence, he looked up at me. "You sick bastard! I'm calling the police." Clowns are the worst roommates, don't you think? Always uncovering the dead bodies in places you specifically told them not to look. I'm afraid I had to kill him too. So now my old Swedish friend has a dorm partner to sleep along with him in that big freezer. Oh, by the way, I'm still looking for a new roommate, if anyone's interested. I don't know what I was thinking. It seemed like an innocuous idea. Find one of the clowns, corner it, and find out why they're doing all of this. I would become a media sensation. My findings might have led to blowing the entire clown sensation wide open, all because of my bravery. I'd be a hero, I thought. At first, my town seemed to be a sacred land that no clown dare touch. It was a God-fearing blue-collar town where everyone knew their neighbors, and the postman could eat for an entire week thanks to the housewives and their generosity. There was one school, a Baptist-run institution that, surprisingly, focused more on education than religion. Everyone who has ever lived in that town went to that school, just like everyone here got their first job at the window factory. It was simply how things were. Some call it trite. We called it home. Sure, there was crime. One time, for example, the little Daxterly's oldest boy lashed out and broke 3 windows at the church. It was all over the news and the papers. People would gossip, of course. However, no one chastised him for his actions. Instead, everyone was supportive and got him the help he needed. I'm not trying to brag. This is just a genuinely pleasant and nurturing community. When the news broke that a clown was seen sitting on the steps of the school the other night, it sent a ripple through the calm town. Everyone had been following the stories, yet no one was concerned of seeing them here. Why would they be? We all knew it was a prank, albeit a stupid one, that would fade away into obscurity. It was chalked up to the Daxterly boy lashing out again, until the next sighting, and the next, then another, then 2 clowns together. It wasn't until a dog was found mutilated in the middle of the town center that the population collectively began to panic. Curfews were enforced, shops closed early, schools and church services were reduced to twice a week. Had someone passed through after dusk, they would have found a ghost town. Fear was running the town at this point. I wanted it to stop. My plan was simple. Every night since the first incident, the clown had been seen on the school grounds or the church grounds. All I would need to do is stay out of sight of the sheriff while I waited to see a clown. Then, simply run up on it and find out what the hell they're in this town for. Easy. Darkness had finally fallen the night I'd made the decision to act. I've never believed in guns, nor taking a weapon to an unarmed fight, but I have to admit, the hysteria was beginning to grate on me at that point. I went out with a wooden Louisville slugger and a flashlight. It was slightly after 10 p.m. and most of the residents were already sleeping in hopes of seeing daylight sooner. They made it easy for me to avoid the sheriff, as I was able to cut through backyards and hide in driveways when the patrol cars got too close. This was a small town. On a regular night, I could walk to the school in less than 10 minutes, but law enforcement wasn't taking any chances. It took me almost an hour to reach the school, and when I did, I was upset to see nothing waiting for me. Nothing at all. I posted up in a nearby tree that had a clear view of the front of the building and got comfortable. Something in my gut told me I was going to have a long wait ahead of me. I wish I could say that a few hours into my shift, a clown came and I was able to get my answers. I really do. But I fell asleep. I woke up on the lawn under the tree to blinding daylight and a gun in my face. The officer was stern and visibly shaken, but nice enough to me. At the station, he gave me coffee and a nice selection of pastries and fruits to choose from for breakfast. In other cities, this might be seen as them buttering up a suspect to get them to talk, but not here. This was Southern hospitality at its finest. We talked for a while about everything going on with the clown situation. The conversation wasn't focused on my actions like I had expected. The officer was more interested in what my thoughts were on how to deal with this clown situation that was completely paralyzing the town. I think he saw my actions as more brave than incriminating. Like I wanted, I could still be a hero. After a couple of hours, we came to an agreement on the situation. The sheriff's office would turn a blind eye to any investigations I wanted to conduct alone, even after hours. However, any criminal activity would be penalized to the fullest extent, especially assault. He made it very clear that no matter who was behind this, I wasn't allowed to touch a single hair on their head. It was a reasonable compromise. That night, I returned to my post. It was a lot easier without having to stay out of sight. A simple nod of acknowledgement was the only exchange I had with these officers patrolling the streets. When I made it to the school, I found no signs of life yet again. I climbed the tree and settled in for a long night. About 2 hours into my wait, I still hadn't seen any signs of a clown. My eyes were getting heavier by the minute, so I made the decision to inspect the grounds and see if I could discover anything indicating a clown might be in the area. When I jumped to the ground from the lowest branch, I was greeted by a tall figure wearing a bright, shiny blue bodysuit that was bedazzled with buttons and patterns. I'd be lying if I said I didn't fall back against the tree, gasping for air. All confidence left my body as my eyes met its face. I had been expecting a porous silicone mask, not a white human face with red lips and blue hair staring back at me. The lack of a red nose unsettled me as well. This wasn't the clown I was prepared for. I couldn't move. My body had shut down on me when I needed it most. The clown didn't move, didn't even blink. It just stared at me deeply with bright green eyes and a smile that was permanently affixed on its face. A standoff. After a few more minutes, the clown reached one of its white-gloved hands out to me. I looked to its hand, then back to those oddly bright eyes without budging an inch. Nothing about the clown had changed aside from its arm. The clown still didn't blink. It still had that fucking smile. It nodded a couple of times towards its hand like it wanted me to grab it. I was confused, but with the hope of humanity being behind the costume, I reached out to shake the outstretched hand. Before I was able to fully lock palms with the clown, I was met with a light shock that radiated up my forearm. I screamed. The clown arched its head back, grabbing its belly, and laughed at me. It sounded like there was a broken squeaky toy lodged in its throat. The electric jolt must have been enough to revitalize my body as I jumped up and shoved the clown away from me as hard as I could. It fell back in an exaggerated manner, flailing its large white shoes up and sliding on its rear end across the grass. After a brief pause and a look of disbelief, the clown began to silently cry while rotating its fists under its squinting eyes and stomping its heels into the ground. I was annoyed with the dramatics and started yelling at it. Nothing remotely coherent came from my mouth, just a smorgasbord of profanities and blame. Once I relieved my pent-up frustrations, the clown stopped pouting and began its squeaky laugh again, but this time it was accompanied by another noise, a louder noise that wasn't coming from its mouth. The air around me was overtaken by the sound that was similar to a million cicadas clicking in a deep whisper. I couldn't hear the clown in front of me any longer. Everything was overtaken by whatever was making this background noise. I fell back again, grasping my head in pain and attempting to cover my ears. Bang! My heart stopped. I looked up, and the clown in front of me was now a Rorschach painting across the grass. My interrogating officer was standing next to me with a shotgun. "Run!" he yelled at me as he grabbed my arm and yanked me to my feet. Surrounding the entire field were clowns of all shapes and sizes, walking towards us with their mouths wide open, slightly facing the ground. We barely made it to the station, circumnavigating all of the clowns that overtook the streets. It's been 38 days since that incident. We've been barricaded in the station, taking rotating shifts in the camera room. The clowns, they've taken our everyday lives. We watch them go shopping, walk dogs, go to school and work. It's like they're trying to replace us. The only peculiar thing they do is surround the station at night and laugh in unison, all night until the sun rises. Then they continue on like nothing happened. We've got full utility access here and have been keeping up on the news. We know it's spreading. I fear that my actions that night may have caused them to resent humans. I wanted to be the hero, but I can't find a way to stop this. Greenville is gone. Don't let the media fool you. Stay away from here. And more importantly, don't go near the clowns. My name is Mr. Bogo, and I'm a professional clown. I've been one for over 15 years. I graduated from Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey College in 1997, the last year the college had a fixed location. I'm what you call a tramp or hobo clown, but mostly I'm referred to as the sad clown when pointed at by children. I am a sad clown. Kids don't care about us anymore. We're not hired for birthday parties or special events like we used to be. Clowning has gone the way of the dodo. I remember walking into a family's home and seeing the children's faces light up like it was Christmas morning. They were in awe of the jokes and gags and physical humor I brought with me. Not anymore. Kids today don't have the attention span for a clown, not like they used to. I am a sad clown. I never got my chance to shine. Business has been rough for the past few years, and most of us don't want to give up the life, but some of us don't have a choice. Me, I refuse to give it up. This is my life. This is who I am. I am a clown. But with business being the way it is, I've been forced to expand my horizons. Recently, I met with an old friend. We graduated together back in the day. I haven't seen him in years, so I was thrilled when he looked me up. After a few beers, we started reminiscing about the good old days, and naturally, today's clown market, or lack thereof, came up. That's when he told me about what he's been up to for the past few years. Children aren't the only ones who like clowns, he whispered through beer-soaked breath. He slid me a slip of paper and patted me on the shoulder. He leaned over before getting up and walking out of the bar. "We're hiring." I flipped the page over and saw the address. The next night, I was in full makeup, standing on the doorstep of a stranger's house. My heart felt like it was going to burst out of my chest as I pressed the doorbell. It was one of those long chime bells. It felt like it went on for hours. The door finally opened, and a beautiful bleach blonde woman stood before me. She was covered in gaudy jewelry, and those heels must have been at least 6 inches. She grinned from ear to ear as she took my hand and led me through the enormous house. It was filled with people. Men, women, old, young, black, white. I lost count of them all. They were all smiling as I passed by. I was led up the staircase and into a small room with a vanity mirror. The woman sat me down and left. I opened my bag and checked my makeup. I assumed this is what the room was meant for. I double-checked to make sure I had all my props. I was good to go. I slipped on my giant clown shoes as a man walked into the room. He was about 40 with salt and pepper hair and looked as if he took very good care of himself. That tux must have cost thousands. "You ready?" he said, checking his watch. "Yes, sir," I said, trying to hide my shaky hands. "Good," he said with the same grin as the woman. "Follow me." I did. We ended up in a room down the hall. This one was completely dark when we walked in. I could feel how large it was even in the darkness. The man flipped a light switch and half of the room lit up. All the people from downstairs were sitting in leather recliners, watching me. They were all smiling. They seemed almost giddy. The man patted my shoulder as he walked to the back of the room into the darkness. I had no idea what was going on. A tiny red light turned on in the back of the room. It looked like it was above some sort of tripod. The man came walking back out and flipped a second light switch. The other half of the room lit up. All of their heads turned in unison, turned to the bed, to the girl. Eyes and mouth taped shut. Naked, limbs spread out to each corner, tied to bedposts. Muffled screams poured out from behind the tape. They all turned back to me just as the man flipped the switch and turned off the audience lights. For a split second before they went dark, I saw the joy in their faces. They lit up like kids on Christmas morning. They were there for me. The sound of zippers being unzipped filled the room. This was my time to shine. So if any of you out there would like to utilize my services, please feel free to drop me a line. My name is Mr. Bongo, and I'm a clown for rent. I'm always looking to expand. Hope to hear from you soon. Mr. Bongo, clownforrent@gmail.com.